Hi everybody, I'm Brandon, and today I'm out here with a friend's 2010 Infiniti G37x all-wheel drive. They came to me because it had a couple codes and wasn't running quite right, so I did some diagnostics on it, and let me show you what I found. First off, I had this combination of a P0300 and P0021. Both of those codes suggest to me that we had an issue with the VVT solenoids. This is a common issue on Infinitis and Nissans. So I went ahead and replaced the Bank 2 driver's side VVT solenoid. While I did that, I also replaced the passenger because if one goes, one's likely on the way out. But while I was also in here, I had noticed several ABS related trouble codes and stability control related trouble codes. Specifically, the ones that were concerning me was this U0415 invalidator received from ABS control module and this B2557. Both of these would suggest to me that there's not good communication with one of the ABS sensors, also known as the wheel speed sensors, or the ABS control module. Now, typically I might think that this is an ABS sensor issue, but I decided to go take the car for a ride and found something kind of concerning. So let me show you that now. Initially, I don't see anything weird about it, but as soon as I start to take off here, you might begin to see some things and hear some things. So we have the brake light that just came on. So now I'm seeing both the VDC light, that's the stability control warning light, as well as the traction control light indicating that traction control is not working. Let's see what else crops up. I don't know if you can hear that, but we have a little bit of a rumbling sound now. We have the brake light actuated going on and off. And as I drive along here, I notice that this rumbling sound is exactly in proportion to the speed of the vehicle. Already I'm beginning to suspect that this is not an ABS or wheel speed sensor issue, but rather a wheel bearing. I'm hearing classic signs of a wheel bearing. This is a pretty serious issue because it can cause the hub and wheel bearing to detach, which could result in an accident. And as I steer towards the right, I'm hearing the sound getting louder on the left-hand side. So if I just turn the wheel a little bit right and left, the sound continues to pick up as I steer right. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and say that we have a wheel bearing issue on the left front. I don't want to go very far with this car. I'm going to get back to the garage and start working on this. Here I am back at the car. I went ahead and decided to just jack it up and use a jack stand to hold the driver's side front corner up. I always keep the jack under there just as a second point of lifting to ensure that the car doesn't go anywhere. Always make sure you're in park with the parking brake on. I don't think I'm going to need the lift for this job today, so this was just easier. I'm going to show you a couple of the tools that I use here. I have my impact gun ready. I have an impact socket wrench, various 10mm wrenches, a couple 17mm wrenches, a couple 10, 17, and 21mm sockets, along with a 32mm socket, which will be used to remove the axle keeper nut. Also have some pliers here, a hammer, some breaker bars, and various torque wrenches of the 3/8, quarter, and half-inch variety, which we'll get to when we're putting this back together, and I'll explain where and why I'm using these. But first of all, we need to get the wheel and tire taken off the car. So right here, this particular wheel has a wheel lock key on it. Make sure you don't lose these. Always keep it with the car. It really helps when you're going to change a tire or when service needs to be done on the car. So that just fits in there. And generally, I like to hand remove these just to make sure that in case it's kind of stuck on there, I'm not ruining the splines on that key. Okay, so that one removed easily enough, so I'm going to go ahead and finish taking it off here with the impact gun. Just came off nice and easy. Just get the wheel and tire off. Okay, now before I go any further, what I want to do is get a little bit of heat on this axle nut and some penetrating fluid, because I know this car originally came from New Jersey. I don't know how long this has been on here, but likely for its full life and 186,000 plus miles. So I'm going to try and give myself a fighting chance by heating things up a little bit here. Spray a little PB blaster in there. So while that PB blaster is working, I want to go ahead and try to remove this ABS sensor. This is a 10 millimeter bolt that just holds this in. Okay, I've got that about out, and the reason that I want to remove this is because I don't want to damage the ABS sensor when I go to remove the hub and bearing assembly. But this has probably been on here a long time, so we'll see if it comes out nicely. Okay, so I had to put the camera down for a second, but I was able to just gently wiggle this. Don't force it, because sometimes they'll break off inside, but this one came out just fine. Off camera, I went ahead and decided to jack up the other side of the car so that I could turn the wheels. This will make my access to the brake caliper brackets easier and some of the other work that I'm trying to do here. But first things first, I need to get this cotter pin out. They often want to fight you and get stuck, but we'll see if this one comes out easily. There we go. Okay, next step, I want to try to get this 32 millimeter nut off of the axle and bearing assembly. This is a 32 millimeter socket. Let's see if it comes off. Oh, nice. That was nice and easy. Real quick, I'm going to give a couple knocks of the hammer on the outside of the threaded axle shaft. Just tap that in a little bit. That'll give me a little bit more working room on the back side once I pull some more of this off. And hang tight a minute while I reposition. Next, I'm going to get over here on the back side of the caliper bracket, and I want to remove the caliper assembly with the caliper bracket on using a 22 millimeter socket. Okay, top one came out easily. Don't lose the washer. I had to go ahead and finish that one up off camera a little bit because my battery ran out. But got that one out, and now we should just be able to pull this whole assembly to the side, loaded with the caliper and the pads. I'm going to go ahead and put a bungee through here. I'll run it through twice just to hang it to ease tension on the brake hose. Okay, that's alright right there. Okay, now I'm going to give a couple whacks with the hammer on here just to help break this rotor loose. I had to give it a couple more whacks and a little bit of PB blaster, but we've got the rotor loose. Alright. Now we have full access to the hub and bearing assembly. And this is looking pretty sorry at this point, so we'll see how easy or difficult it is to get these mounting bolts off the back. Okay. Again, this is a 17 millimeter bolt, and all four of these should be the same, so don't worry about mixing them up. This is taking a bit because the fit is tight, and my impact is dead right now. So I've rotated the camera around to the back side here so you can see me remove these two nuts. I already broke it loose with the breaker bar. This top one is a little bit of a funny angle with the boot here at the CV joint. But with the longer 17mm socket, it's fairly easy to get at. Okay, that's out. And this also proves that you don't need an impact wrench to do this. If they're stuck on there, you know, just soak them in some PB Blaster or penetrating fluid, maybe a little bit of heat, and let those products do their work. Got the bottom one coming out. This one's already not too bad. Okay, get out of the way of the camera. And there we go. All four are out. Now, moment of truth. We'll see how difficult this thing is to come off. Okay, so I ended up having to whack on it a little bit with the hammer and the screwdriver and a lot more PB Blaster, but it just came loose. Our backing plate, dust shield for the brakes are still in place, and there we go. So, as you can see, this thing is pretty shot. Looks bad, sounds bad, feels bad. But we got a new one ready to go, so let me go get that. So before I go putting this new assembly on, I'm going to clean up this mating surface a little bit, because this is just nasty. It'll help the new part go on nice and flat, be a little bit nicer. Surface isn't too bad. I'm going to wipe these axle splines down a little bit. And then to make the next person's life easier, I'm going to put on a little anti-seize here on the surface. A little more. This will just help keep things from rusting and corroding on in the future. I'll put some on these threads here. And the splines. Okay, so here we are. As you can see, here is our new wheel bearing and hub assembly. All shiny and new, nice, and that ought to be a big improvement. Just have to get the splines lined up in here. There we go. It goes on nice. Get that squared up. So real quick, one of the things that I should have mentioned was to clean this lip out. So I'm not seating in here very nice. It's a little bit corroded. Also going to put a little bit of anti-seize around the edge of that. So first things first, we also need our shield on here. So I had to do a couple things off camera to get this hub and bearing assembly in here because I really needed to get behind it and in front of the camera. So I threaded all 4 bolts back in, which drew this back in. We've got our backing plate, our dust shield for the brakes back in place, and now we are ready to torque the 4 bolts back in. These are supposed to be torqued to 65 foot-pounds. And I'm going to go ahead and do this in a crisscross pattern. But first of all, I'm just going to tighten these up a bit before getting to our final torque spec. Okay, I'm going to go turn the wheel to make this access easier. And I'm going to go ahead and torque this top rear one first, because I've already drawn tight the lower right one. And again, this is 65 foot-pounds. Okay, we've got our click. Okay, we've got that lower back one snug. I'm going to turn the wheel back. There's 65 foot-pounds. I'll go up to the top here. Okay, and then we have our one last one. I'm going to turn the wheel back one more time. And that's just so that I can get a diagonal crisscross pattern to draw everything in accurately on the torque. And not get anything pulled in unevenly. Switching to a shorter socket to get a better fit in here. There's our 65 foot-pounds. And then one more time, I'm going to just check this upper rear one. Yep. Okay. And that is it for that place. Now we are ready to put the brakes back on. So first, I'm going to put the rotor on. Before I do that, I am going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the back of this so that I don't have to fight it, or somebody else doesn't have to fight it the way I did. Okay. Take our whole caliper assembly with caliper brackets. Get our pads slid back over. And get this lined up. Okay, now that I've got that threaded a tiny bit, I can start the bottom one. Okay, I'm just getting my 22mm socket so that I can start driving this in. I decided to go get the power ratchet just to make this a little bit quicker. And then we're going to torque these down. And the torque spec on these are 98 foot-pounds. Okay. I'd gone ahead and taken the lug nuts and threaded them on by hand just to hold the caliper or the rotor back while I put the caliper on, just to get my alignment. I'm going to go ahead and straighten this out and be right back. We're ready to put the axle keeper nut back on. This is the 32mm one. This one's in good shape, so we'll be able to reuse this without a problem. I'm actually going to put a little bit of anti-seize within the threads of the nut. Start throwing that on by hand. Okay, and then I'm going to have my assistant in the car hold the brakes. Alright, and then we're going to torque this nut down to 92 foot-pounds. Good. And then for good measure, we're going to throw a new cotter pin in. This one's a little long, so I'll trim it off, and then all we need to do is put the wheel and tire back on. One more thing before I end up putting the wheel and tire back on, I need to put the ABS/wheel speed sensor back in its slot with its little 10mm bolt. It just slides in. Just wiped it off real quick with a paper towel so that it's clean and goes in nice. And then there is a torque spec on this one. This little guy here, the torque spec is 62 inch-pounds. And yes, that's inch-pounds, not foot-pounds. It's very light torque. If you try to go too much, you'll break it. It's very light torque. Okay. Just wipe this rotor off real quick with the clean side of the rag. And now we are ready to put the wheel and tire back on. We've got everything back on, the wheel and tire. I went ahead and did everything up snug. Rolled the car back and forth a bit to let everything settle. And now I'm going to torque the spec, which is 80 foot-pounds. And as standard practice, we go in a crisscross pattern so that everything gets torqued correctly with even value. And with that, this job is a wrap. I'm going to go clear the diagnostic trouble codes, and I'm going to go test drive it and make sure everything's good. If you found this video helpful and enjoy the content, please subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. It helps me to be able to keep doing this and grow the channel more. Thank you.